Welcome to the Hedgehog Watchdog. I'm Greg Baldwin, joined by my co-host Devin Saxon. Tonight we got a special candidate series episode. We're joined by Collin Duprel, who is the Libertarian candidate for U.S. House of Representatives in South Dakota this year. Welcome to the show, Collin.
Thank you.
We had some technical difficulties, so hopefully people will still be able to find the link and join us tonight. If anybody has any questions for the candidate, you can post them in our chat tonight as we're going along. I've got about 12 questions or so written down here. But the first question we always like to ask our candidates is just the basic, tell us about yourself. And then you can maybe pivot at the end to what made you want to run for U.S. House.
Well, I think like any good candidate, pivoting is what we do best.
Show the athletic prowess.
Well, I am a fifth-generation rancher here in western South Dakota. My family has been in agriculture ever since they homesteaded here around the same time South Dakota was becoming a state. And agriculture, obviously, for our state is pretty important. It's the number one economy in the state of South Dakota. And having that background, I think, as a representative is something that our state really needs. I got involved, as you know, because the reality was nobody else wanted the job. I didn't lay in bed at night coveting the idea of running for United States House. In the spring, it became pretty clear that Dusty Johnson likely was going to be running unopposed, and I find it to be a real travesty of our republic if a U.S. Congress seat runs uncontested. The Democrat wasn't going to make it onto the ballot. The independent upstart was never going to collect the signatures that he needed. And that meant if, as a party, we didn't provide a candidate, then one of the most important positions in our country and definitely in our state was going to get to go back to D.C. without giving the people a choice. Math is pretty important when you consider that. There are 289,000 Republicans in South Dakota, 157,000 Democrats, 149,000 independents, several thousand Libertarians, and a few hundred unaffiliated voters. That means that if I didn't run, nearly 300,000 plus people wouldn't even have an opportunity to let their voice be heard. Mm-hmm. So by simply being on the ballot, if I get one vote this fall, I will know that that is a person that otherwise wouldn't have even had a chance. And that's why I'm on the ballot, because the people deserved it. And I feel like if you're on the sidewalk and you see a kid in the street and a bus is coming towards him and you have the opportunity to move that kid out of the way and you don't, you're responsible for what happens to that kid to a certain degree. And I saw that bus coming. Dusty Johnson was driving, and nobody else was going to grab the state. And I jumped out into the street, and that's why I'm here today.
Nice. Do you think it's too strict, the restrictions on independents running for office? You mentioned that the guy couldn't even get enough signatures, and we already have difficulty getting candidates to run against, we have like a one candidate thing going on right now besides you before you stepped in. Do you think the restrictions are too crazy on independents?
I think that they could be lightened. I think that the concern by some is we're going to have too many candidates running for office, and that's not true. We're not going to have too many people that want to do this. I can tell you as somebody that's doing it, it's not that pleasant that everybody's going to be harping at the opportunity. To be totally fair, the independent who was trying to get on the ballot didn't give it as good of a shot as he should have. It was only a couple weeks ahead of turn-in time when he really got after it. I feel like if I had to gather signatures, I could get them gathered if I was trying to be on the ballot and had that plan to last minute try to jump in, it is going to be difficult for anybody.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the resources and the staff and the money that the Republican Party has, it is difficult to get on the ballot. Even their biggest opposition in the state, the Democrat Party, they have a hard time sometimes getting the signatures and everything needed. And that's with a pretty deep well of resources, at least by comparison to independents and libertarians. We don't live in I talk about the dangers of the two-party state being so dangerous across the country. South Dakota has a bigger problem, and that's the one-party system. There isn't really even a two-party system here. It's the Republicans versus everybody else. And to the point where they're even eating each other. Now it's about who's the most Republican of the Republicans. And you have two pretty clear factions appearing between the West River and the East River Republican Party. And if you looked at the primary, that was pretty evident of that. Dusty Johnson did not win a commanding primary. Taffy Howard got about 40% of the vote. That's not good if you're an incumbent, that nearly half your party didn't support you. So, yeah, there was a lot of pivoting in that.
So Dusty Johnson, honestly, I haven't heard much from him for the last couple of years, but now that it's election season, it seems almost like he's putting his name on every bill that he can. So a couple of the recent bills that he's proposed, and they're not necessarily terrible on their face, but I wanted to get your opinion on them. The one that struck me was a little funny was the TikTok ban. Apparently it blocks TikTok on government devices, but it's also talking about people on like military bases. So all of our soldiers, they might like TikTok, but apparently Dusty Johnson doesn't. But then there's also the Teens Act, which was putting teenagers to work, allowing teenagers to work longer hours. Of course, you're a farmer, and there's always been some carve-out exceptions for teens or youth on the farm anyway. But what do you think of some of these bills he's bringing? Is this important work, or maybe you should be focusing on something else?
So in addition to those two, the one bill I want to talk about that he recently proposed is one that blocks the Chinese specifically from purchasing American farmland. Yeah. And I think that's great. However, this was one of my first campaign issues. And I'm not saying he copied me, but he did. And
Libertarians paving the way again.
I took it I took it two steps further than Dusty Johnson did on the purchase of American ag land. The first step that I went farther on was this wasn't just to stop the Chinese. I don't lay in bed at night and check for the Chinese boogeyman under my bed like Dusty does. What I do is I look out the window and I see 35 million acres of American ag and timberland owned by foreign entities, and China only owns about 300,000 acres of that. We have a significant amount of farm and timberland owned by foreign powers, and while China is a major threat, it's not just China that we should worry about. We don't have to worry about foreign invasion if other countries just buy us. And that's what's happening. So in addition to stopping China, I would like to see the stop of all purchases by any foreign entity from buying any more than 10 acres of ag ground. They could still buy industrial ground. They could still open up a business. They can still buy a property to live in as a foreign national and work here. But they don't need to own wide swaths of what is our food supply, because I do believe that's a national security issue. And secondly, I would go so far as to repatriate that land from these foreign powers that own it. For reference, the state of Iowa, the entire state of Iowa is largely farmland. There's about 30 million acres of farmland in Iowa, and foreign powers own 35 million acres. So owned by foreign powers, there's more than the entire state of Iowa in land owned by them, and that's something that we need to wake up and pay attention to. But it goes a lot farther than fear mongering about only just China. While they're a concern, we need to look at the bigger picture. Going to the bill about teens being able to work more, I think that's fine. Teenagers are old enough to make that decision. Some of them might even need to work if they want to help their families. There's a lot of people in South Dakota struggling under our current economy that Congress people like my opponent have put into the position they have. I think what we need to do, and I've talked about this a lot, is we need to remove income taxes on minors, because one of our founding principles was no taxation without representation. And if you're a minor working under the age of 18, you are taxed and you don't have an opportunity to have your voice heard about the tax code. So I think removing income taxes on minor workers would be not only common sense, but I think it would be a real sense of dignity. The other bill you mentioned, the TikTok block, I know that he's a talk blocker, so to speak. And I don't know, I like TikTok. If you're on your phone, you're not really supposed to be dealing with classified material on your cell phone anyway, whether or not it's your government device or not.
Yeah.
This is one of those create an issue to make it look like you're solving something when there wasn't one in the first place.
Yeah.
The military, everybody else, they're not supposed to be transmitting data that could be compromised on any sort of handheld device anyway. It is what it is.
This is one of those things, to me, it's like the government hates competition, because what they're worried about is that this kind of goes back to the Trump days. He wanted to ban TikTok. He actually forced the company to be sold, which is kind of crazy to think that the president can just force you to sell your company. But anyway, it kind of goes back to that. They're worried that the Chinese are collecting data and whatnot. So it's like the government just hates competition in this situation, because they've been in trouble for collecting our data. There's spying on us, but heaven forbid if the Chinese are spying on us too, which I don't know if they care about my Amazon orders or whatever. But
when elected to Congress, you're not going to see me transmitting data that could be compromised on my Android. That's just that is what it is.
Well, that is good. Another big story been going on for months. The Ukraine situation. Being a U.S. House, you're going to have to deal with things like that. We've been sending them billions of dollars in foreign aid to fight this battle. What's your kind of stance on Ukraine and continuing to give them funds and billions of dollars?
It's what a lot of people have called cold, and that's a sorry not sorry. One of my official platform positions is that we need to eliminate all federal foreign financial aid completely until this country is no longer in financial debt. The United States of America is not a bank. And if we were, we would be a really shitty bank, because we've gone into debt sending money overseas. At least banks make their money back, and we don't. Yeah. I am sorry for what's happening in Ukraine. Russia is a problem, but Russia invading Ukraine is not a direct threat to our sovereignty. And I don't think it's necessary for us to be involved. If we really thought we needed to be involved, then before the invasion, we should have stationed troops in Ukraine at the border, and Russia might not have even invaded. We decided it wasn't worth that much skin in the game, so we didn't. And now they have invaded. I don't think that we can just buy this war out. And if it's that important to the world needs to be involved, and not just the United States flipping the check again, because that's what we always do. And that's why we're $30+ trillion in debt. Inflation is skyrocketing, and American families can't even pay their rent. It's ridiculous that we keep sending Ukraine money. It's ridiculous we keep sending all these countries in the world money. We send foreign aid in the form of finances to China when they own a large part of our debt as it is.
Mm.
The spending is radical, the spending is reckless, and the spending is a long ways from conservative, and that's what conservatives historically have done. They've voted to send money overseas for other interests.
A couple follow-ups about the military, but since you touched on spending too much and debt out of control, we'll just move on real quick to that. The national debt is out of control. South Dakota Congressman Dusty Johnson says, he said this recently on a WNAX interview. He said, if Republicans regain control of Congress in November, cutting spending will be a priority. Do you buy that?
No, I don't. And I'll tell you why. I don't think that any career politician ever actually wants to accomplish the goals that they run on. And I'll tell you why. Because if you're a career politician and you're running on goals A, B, and C, and then while elected, you actually accomplish goals A, B, and C, what do you have to run on next term? Nothing. But if you never actually get them accomplished, you can bitch about those goals that you've had again and again and again. Why do conservatives, why do liberals, Democrats, and Republicans both run on the same issues every single time? They do it because they're not able to accomplish anything. I don't believe that conservatives and Republicans, if they were getting control of the House, are going to do anything about spending, because they had a Republican House, Senate, and president only a few years ago. And what did they get done? Nothing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
They had the opportunity then to get something meaningful done. And all they did was eat each other.
Yeah, Republicans tend to actually, they hate admitting this, but Republicans actually tend to outspend Democrats when they get in office. So, although Dusty's talking about Congress, the only time I've seen Republicans actually try to do something about Congress or about spending is when they know it can't actually pass anyways. So, whenever a Democrat controls the White House, you saw it 10 years ago where they were shutting down the government when Barack Obama was in office. Well, spending's completely out of control, and so they shut down the government to protest that. And then, a couple years later, Republicans get control. They do absolutely nothing. Rinse, repeat.
Well, the problem is career politicians. That's all they care about, is getting reelected, getting more cannon fodder, getting something into the media, making nuanced political leanings on TV. That's all they care about. They don't care about actually solving issues. Career politicians, the DC establishment, the swamp you hear about, it's a real problem, and it needs to be dealt with. I've been called a populist by a few people, and I'm fine with that, because there's a class of political and corporate elites that are in control of this country, and they keep us divided by all these acts they put on, and they'll continue to do so as long as we allow them to stay into power. We need to take that power back and return it to the people.
So, along the lines of the budget, do you support if somebody, or well, heck, you could champion the issue yourself and introduce the bill, but would you support like a balanced budget amendment?
I'd write the damn bill.
There you go. I feel like that's the only way government would stop recklessly spending, is if they can't recklessly spend. There has to be something that stops them. And every few years, we run up against the debt ceiling, and oh my God, the debt ceiling, we're about to hit it, and we can't. And then it turns into, well, we can't default on the debt. And the United States has to pay bills, and then they raise the debt ceiling, and then they just spend recklessly again.
Well, it's pretty basic. If you and your wife are in massive amounts of debt at the end of the year, do you sit down at your kitchen table and go, wow, honey, did you realize we're $750,000 in debt? Yeah, we did. Well, what should we do? Well, How about we spend more money next year and don't pay on this at all? That's what the United States Congress does every single year. They look each other in the eye with straight faces at that massive wall of debt, and then they turn around and ignore it and spend more money. And what does that do to the American dollar? It destroys it. That's why a loaf of bread costs 3 times what it did 10 years ago. That's why eggs are nearly $5 a dozen now. That's why inflation is up there 13, 14% reported, but really some economists have suggested that it could be truly up closer to 25%. We are destroying the value of the dollar with this insurmountable debt and the money machine going burr, burr, burr every chance it gets. And quote, quote, stimulating the economy with these injections of unearned dollars. The problem isn't necessarily the dollars themselves. It's the dollars going out without hours worked and products, and services rendered for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's creating more cash flow than cash demand. And that's some of the reasons inflation is so out of control.
Well, perfect example of kind of what you were talking about was recently that Inflation Reduction Act. They paid $300 billion on the national debt, and they were all, patting themselves on the back about that. About, hey, look, we're reducing the debt, or we're reducing inflation by paying down the debt. So they finally admitted, for one, that the debt's a problem, which I thought was at least something. But it wasn't even a week later, regardless of how you feel about student loan debt, the deal they did, they spent like 3 times that $300 billion that they paid, allegedly paid on the debt. They spent that times 3 within like 10 days of signing that bill.
Well, to begin with, the Inflation Reduction Act does nothing to decrease inflation. I think it actually is going to cause more inflation. Part 2, I understand the frustration that some people have had with the paying off of student loans under $10,000. I paid off my student loans the first time I got a bill in the mail when my interest was over after college. It was really difficult. I spent the entirety of my savings, part of my credit, and then everything in my checking accounts pay it off just because I didn't want to pay interest on that student debt. And I had to, basically live on ramen noodles for quite a while until I could start buying more groceries again. So I do understand why people are upset, but I don't look at my own hardship and think that everybody else should have to suffer the same hardship just because I did. That's not a character builder. That's jealousy. And I do see the upside of paying off that debt for 2 reasons. One, those loans were absolutely predatory. And like I said earlier, in regards to financial aid, the United States is not a bank. We should never have been a bank. And if we are a bank, then we're a shitty bank. And I remember being 17 years old and getting ramrodded into being forced to take on all this crazy debt and go to school for a degree that I ended up not even using. There is a predatory system there, and it should be dismantled and reassessed. And
do you think they should be able to declare bankruptcy on student loans?
I think you should be able to declare bankruptcy on anything. There's
I mean, I know why they won't do that.
Well, that's
they won't do that because then nobody's going to loan you money to go do, waste your time in school for no reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's another example of the government creating rules for everybody else that doesn't apply to them. It's fine for somebody to declare bankruptcy for a whole litany of reasons, unless the person that you're paying is them. Then you can't declare bankruptcy on that. They will bleed you until you have no blood left.
Go back to the military again real quick, but so do you think Congress should declare war before troops are sent to foreign countries to fight? Did you hear that?
Do I think Congress should declare war before troops go to a foreign country to fight? I think that depends on if we're fighting a foreign country or if we're fighting a terrorist faction or something like that. If we're if we're legitimately being engaged in combat as an invasion, then there should be an official declaration of war. You know, for example, if before the invasion of Ukraine, we had stationed troops on the border on the Ukrainian side to try to prevent an invasion, I don't think that would have required a declaration of war. But in the circumstance where we were to deploy troops to Russia, yes, that should need an official declaration of war. If we're responding to, you know, Al-Qaeda, I don't think that requires a declaration of war because Al-Qaeda is not a state, and Congress can't declare war on a non-government entity.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, but do you believe that the government has the authority to go into foreign countries and wage these battles? Especially in some situations, these countries have said explicitly, "We don't want you here," and they've taken votes. Like in Iraq, the Iraqi government took multiple votes saying that we don't want you here, and apparently the United States government just allows themselves to be anywhere. They allow themselves to, what do you want? How do I want to say this? Engage pretty much. There's something like we're in like over 30 countries right now. We have troops engaging in over 30 countries. A lot of them tend to be in Africa. I guess maybe I don't really have a question there, but
walk softly and carry a big stick is my opinion. We need to end empire building. We need to quit sending our young men and women overseas to die for nothing. If other countries request our assistance, that should be vindicative on, do we have a mutual aid pact with that country? Is there significant strategic value in protecting that country? Is there an economic value in protecting that country? If there's not, it's not our job. We're not the world's police. We don't need to be involved in every little dust up that happens somewhere across the world. The only time we ought to be using our military is if our sovereignty is directly threatened or the sovereignty of one of our allies is directly threatened. And when I say ally, I use that term very specifically. I don't mean a third world country that in no way has benefit of a relationship with us. I mean a country that is going to come flying in with their own planes if we're under attack. Those are the ones that we need to stick our neck out for. It's a transactional relationship. It's not our job to hold the hand of every country in the world and spend our money and our lives to defend them.
Do you think Taiwan is an independent country, or do you think that it belongs to China?
Well, I only really look at it as Taiwan and then mainland Taiwan.
So you're not going to get any Chinese support for your campaign then?
Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen. Taiwan's the only legitimate country over there. And the mainland Taiwan has sure been upset a lot lately by the island of Taiwan. And even there, I don't think that we need to be involved heavily. That is something for them to sort out. I recognize Taiwan and I sure do wish them the best. But there needs to be, like I said, something transactional for us to take real action on.
So I had this question come up at the state fairs. I thought it was a little bit of an odd question, but it kind of goes along with the war aspect. But would you oppose or are you in favor, if it came to it, of reinstituting the draft? I did see that females are now required to sign up for selective service, whereas they weren't before. So if there ever was a draft, apparently now it's males and females will both be going.
Right now, the military is at an all-time record enlistment. Enlistments aren't going down. If you know people who are active duty in the military right now, they look for any reason they can to kick you out. I think instead of the draft, we should be looking at the possibility of allowing people in prison the opportunity to join the military again, like they did years and years ago.
Hell yeah.
If you've been sentenced to 40 or 50 years in prison, and an alternative is, instead of sitting in a cell soaking up tax dollars, you can repay your debt to society and not sit in that cell anymore. I don't think there's anything wrong with allowing them that opportunity. As far as the draft comes, I'm not a fan of the draft. I don't think that somebody should be forced to fight a government's war. The real question on the draft is, well, what if we're ever invaded? If we're ever invaded, you're not going to need a draft to find Americans willing to sign up and defend their country. They'll be there. They don't need to be ordered by their government to protect themselves and their families.
I agree.
Do you think it's hypocritical that the Democratic Party and Joe Biden always talk about sending weapons of war to Ukraine while they all go on their Twitter accounts and say that we need to ban weapons of war in America?
I think hypocrisy abounds in every party. It's not only them. There's a lot of reasons to own an AR-15, and we're seeing one of them right now in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's the biggest reason the Second Amendment was written had nothing to do with foreign invasion. It had to do with the own government of ours becoming tyrannical, and people forget that. The example I always use is, with the Second Amendment and the freedom to own firearms existing today, there is always going to be tragedy. It's unavoidable. The best thing we can do is try to prevent it with arming ourselves and having people willing to respond to it. But without the Second Amendment, you have the potential for Holocaust and genocide. If you believe, like many Democrats do, that Donald Trump was a dictator and a tyrant and a fascist, and he was going to take your rights away and lock up minorities and do all these horrible things, that's your reason to own an AR-15.
Mm-hmm.
So are you in favor of term limits?
That is one of my number one platform issues. Absolutely. I think that Lord Acton said it best when he said that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the longer people are in office, the more they're disconnected from the people they represent. I mean, you can't know what the problems of South Dakotans are if you spend all your time in Washington, D.C. That's the reality.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be cycling these people out. The institutional power that you gain as an incumbent is pretty significant. I crashed, quote, quote, town hall of my opponent about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And when I showed in, I had this conversation with a woman on my staff. She said, "Do you think he even knows what you look like?" And we walked in the door, and he was talking. And we're up at the very top, and he stopped what he was talking about, and he pointed me out to the crowd. He said, "Hey, I just want everybody to know, this is Collin Duprel. He's my opponent this year. He's the Libertarian candidate for United States House. As much as I would like to give him the microphone tonight so you guys could hear him talk, this is an official federal government event, so I will not be giving him the microphone to campaign."
Official government event, huh?
Yeah, what was official about it? It was a town hall.
Well, it was a town hall for Dusty Johnson as our United States congressman. It wasn't a town hall for Dusty Johnson running for Congress. So, and the federal government cannot officially pay for or endorse a candidate to run or campaign. But he's on the ballot and he's running and he's doing his job, and people are asking him questions about what he's going to do if he's reelected. It's a farce. And that's an example of the institution and the incumbent having such an advantage. Is he's there at an event paid for by the federal government, campaigning unofficially, officially, and not allowing somebody else to challenge him.
Yeah, it seems like official town hall forums should be during the non-election season.
I agree with that completely.
Like Kristi Noem's done more campaigning outside of the state than she has in the state. So another question, this doesn't necessarily pertain to Congress, but it is a local issue. You're probably not hearing too much about it West River, but it is a big issue. East River right now, there's a bunch of lawsuits flying around, but there's a CO2 pipeline that they're trying to survey and basically build right through the eastern part of South Dakota. And apparently local landloaders aren't having it. They've, like I said, there's a bunch of lawsuits filing. What do you think about eminent domain for government use? Is there maybe carve-outs where, you know, if you're opposed to it, but maybe in certain situations, something like that?
There's never a legitimate reason for somebody to steal the property of somebody else. Maybe there's a reason for somebody to steal somebody else's property, but it's never a justified one. I have it as an official platform position on my website that I've stated for several years that I think that eminent domain, involuntary annexation should be illegal, period. If you want to build your road, your pipeline, anything, and you don't have my permission, piss off. Full stop.
Sometimes they pretend that, oh, well, you get paid the fair market value for your house. It's like, yeah, but I don't want to sell you my fucking house.
You know, the fair market value of my property is what I determine it to be.
That's true. Everything is up to whatever somebody's willing to pay.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, my ranch is not for sale. My ranch has been in my family for well over 100 years. I hope that someday my son is willing to take it over too. But even though my ranch is not for sale, it could be bought.
Yeah, for the right price.
For the right price, it could be bought. I could buy a different ranch.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's like if these projects are so important, then why aren't we getting 3 times the fair market value? You know?
It's just a matter of how many zeros are you willing to put on the end of this.
Yeah.
And no, I in addition to that CO2 pipeline, which obviously I oppose, there's a similar situation taking part over by Gregory, where there is a Missouri River Electrical Cooperative. I don't remember the name. They're trying to build a dam to basically act as a battery. And there's 15 to 20 landowners involved. And none of them want to sell their property right now. But they've gone ahead and got the permission from the federal government to begin a study on the economic impact and the ecological impact of that dam. And the farmers and ranchers are collecting money right now for what they think is going to be a legal fight, because once that study is over, then they can go back and get a license to go ahead and build and use eminent domain. And it's really interesting, this concept, because I was talking to the president of their board today, and I said, you know, as a rancher, I've never looked at my neighbor's place and said, man, I could sure run a lot more cows if I had that over there. Maybe I'll just get a permit and have it surveyed. And then if that survey comes back the way I want it, I'll just apply to my government to go ahead and take their land because I want it and I'm bigger. That's stealing. It's not legitimate by any reason. And, you know, the argument is always, well, society has the need. Society needs this, and you're not bigger than society. Well, society has the need for farmers and ranchers to be able to do what they do too. Society has the need for people to live in peace. There's a lot of reasons that society can't steal land from each other. I mean, it's really mind-boggling that we even have this conversation about when is it okay for the government to go ahead and take away all your rights. It's never okay.
Now, that's kind of interesting that you brought up that Gregory County or whatever. We actually had somebody message us to the state page the other day about it, but I didn't know nothing about it. But he, when he was talking about it, he said one of the big issues too was that electricity they were trying to generate allegedly wasn't even going to stay in South Dakota. They were just going to ship it somewhere.
Well, it was absolutely not going to stay in Gregory County by any means. It was all going to be going the other way or across the river.
All right.
And it was, yeah, it's less about generation and more about the dam itself being a battery and all the green energy being able to store that energy there. And then when there was, because green energy is often kind of inefficient in the amount of energy it generates, this dam would provide the backup for that battery. And then when there was an overflow, it would shift the water the other way and act as a release for that energy. The project is what it is, but they need to get permission from the people who own it, because there's 2,500 acres of land that would be filled with water if this went through, and that's a lot of ag land, and these people need this land to have their livelihood. And even if you pay them fair market value for that livelihood, it's not like you can just start over nearby, because you want to stay close to your home and you want to continue to do what you do. You can't just get the money from that 2,500 acres and buy 2,500 acres right next to it, because that's somebody else's, and you as a private individual can't eminent domain it to take it too. It's not just like that money is worth way more. That land is worth way more than fair market value to the people that own it.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to go replace that land just because whatever the government decides is fair market value is not what the rancher down the street is going to probably sell his land for.
Well, and the fair market value doesn't cover just everything associated with setting up a place new again either.
Yeah, you'd have to pay taxes on all that money. You got to remember that.
Yeah.
Once the government gets their cut, they steal your land and they take their cut of the sale price.
It's all a word that I shouldn't say on here, but frankly.
Well, we'll move on to a little funner topic, at least from my perspective. You recently endorsed IM27, which is the marijuana legalization bill going before voters November 8th. And also on your campaign site, it says you support decriminalizing it on the national level. Maybe talk about that for a minute or two.
One day, the government was walking through the woods, and they had the hand of the people, and they said, "You see that plant there? That one's fine. Go ahead. You see that plant over there? That one's also fine. But that one right there, if we catch you with that plant, especially multiple times, we're going to lock you up. Sometimes longer than you'll get locked up if you actually literally kill somebody. That's how much we don't want you to have this plant. And that's because we're going to have a hard time taxing you for it." It's ridiculous. One of the biggest places that I hear people complaining about marijuana legalization is when they're getting drunk down at the bar. And the reality is alcohol is by and large way more dangerous than marijuana. I don't use marijuana, but I can't formulate a legitimate reason for marijuana to remain illegal while alcohol is legal. If you want to have the conversation about the betterment of society because certain drugs can make you dangerous, then let's have that conversation, but let's not exclude alcohol from it anymore. And if that's the case, then that's the real thing we need to be worried about. It's not marijuana.
You heard it here first. Collin Duprel wants to bring back the temperance movement. Just kidding. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Big topic in South Dakota. Like I said, we get to vote on it November 8th. Recent polls, it wasn't a very good poll, but recent polls showed it losing 43 to 54. I don't know that I buy that, but I do know they have a harder hurdle this time because they had the benefit of medical marijuana being on the ballot last time, and medical marijuana had overwhelming support. It ended up being like 70 in favor of medical marijuana. I do think there was some confusion that people maybe had, which is why they voted for Amendment A last time. Maybe thinking they were voting for medical because it was kind of all in one. But it'll be interesting to see. I hope it does pass. It's 2022. I never thought 30 years ago we'd still be fighting this battle.
Well, our state will just continually put things on the ballot until they get the result they want. That's the reality. We live in a pretty corrupt place as far as voting goes. Marijuana was not the first vote we've ignored. We, as a state, at least our legislators, ignored the votes in 2006 and 2008, which would have made abortion illegal, and wrote a bunch of trigger laws to go against the will of the people on that. 2016, IM 122, the anti-corruption bill, was famously thrown out, which, here's your sign when your legislators throw out the anti-corruption bill that the people passed. I'm actually going to be speaking publicly in Wall, South Dakota on Thursday at a legislative forum there about my endorsement of IM 27 and why we should legalize marijuana. We need to honor the vote of the people, and having a vote every 2 years until we get a different result is not honoring the will of the people. It's trying to subvert the will of the people. And, I always tell people all the time that polls, while they show marijuana failing right now, I think that they are often meant to influence outcomes as much as they are to predict them. And I think this is an example of pollsters at work. I could do a poll right now and get you a 100% pass rate for marijuana, depending on who I ask.
Yeah.
Or I could take another
poll of 500 libertarians suggests 99% in favor.
That's what I mean. I could do a poll on abortion tomorrow and have it come back with 0% thinking it's legal, as long as I do it at the Catholic Church on Sunday. Yeah. Polls are not everything they're cracked up to be.
Well, I got a couple fun questions for you, but I know you got some other stuff going on tonight, so we'll try to wrap up in the next 15, 20 minutes here. But so if you could repeal any law once you get to Congress, what would it be?
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Just any of them, no matter what?
Yeah, any law, if you could just get rid of it.
Oh, I should know the answer.
There's so many to choose.
I should have an answer to that immediately.
Well, let's narrow it down to your ranching. What if there was one law that regulates or has to do with cattle ranching that you could change, maybe?
Well, change is one thing, but to get rid of is a different thing. If I had to change one thing, it would be to immediately pass mandatory country of origin labeling. Just because foreign meat and produce can be dangerous, and consumers deserve to know what they're eating and what they're putting into your body. I mean, as consumers, we know where the things that we put on our body are from every time. There's a tag and it has to say where it was made, where it was put together, where your clothes are from. But if you want to put it inside your mouth, chew it up, and eat it, you don't get the same right to know where it's from for some reason.
Don't kill me, but we just had we made some Reubens the other day, and we bought that canned corned beef. It was a product of Brazil, so
well, I apologize. Now, so
I'm apologizing.
Yeah, it seems weird how they require that for dispensaries for marijuana. They have to know, you have to track the seed to the store basically all the way through. But for meat or whatever, no, we can't. We don't want to upset China. They're like,
well, it's largely Brazil. We don't want to upset
Brazil
when it comes to beef, and
I mean,
Hold
what
on.
do we do?
God
We
dang
want
it.
to be able to get visas to go see
Hear
the
me
Amazon rainforest
Yeah.
anymore or something.
Can you guys
I
hear me?
know. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I lost you for a second.
I know one weird thing I heard about a couple years ago, and it just didn't make any damn sense to me. But I think they passed a law or they were doing something. But anyway, this was in the news that they were going to send chickens from the United States to China to be processed to be then sent back to the United States to be sold in the United States. And it just, that makes no damn sense. Like, how could that even be profitable to ship chickens to China to process them and then ship them back?
Probably just because of the cheap foreign labor in the slaughterhouses.
Yeah.
And the packing plants and the way that they're storing them without any regulations for health either.
But I think they were gaming the system in the sense that they could say, well, this is American chicken. And it's
they game the system already. Right now, Brazil can put a load of cattle on a ship. And hold on one second. Let me pop out and pop back in. Hold on.
All right, Biden's calling
fine. You're fine. But yeah, another thing about Brazil is they're chopped down the Amazon rainforest to make room for more cattle. So if you're buying your beef from Brazil, Greg, you're killing the sloths and all the woodland creatures of the rainforest.
That's all right. That we need to get rid of that rainforest. It's it's creating climate change.
It's making the air way too breathable, you know.
Yeah, way.
Like, we don't deserve the air to be like the unpolluted.
Can we get some more smog, please? But yeah, no, I kind of knew that about the Brazilian beef, but yeah.
Yeah, they got like
Collin,
bird's eye view maps they got where they're chopping down all this rainforest to make room for all this cattle, and it's like, oh my goodness, maybe people should just stop eating beef from Brazil so they calm down a little bit.
Well, it looks like we might not have Collin back on the show. He messaged and said he's got a cattle emergency, and his cattle are out on the road. So,
well, he can't he talk to us on the phone while he's rounding up the
I know, right? Can we get video of him rounding up the cattle?
Yeah, that'd be a good video.
Yeah, I only had a couple questions left. I wanted him to plug some of the things he's been doing. I mean, he's been out campaigning pretty hard, hitting a lot of events. I know tonight at 9 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock his time, he has an Ask Me Anything over on Reddit. I don't have a link for that, but maybe I can find one and post it in the comments.
Maybe we
and then
next weekend for a little bit. We got two more. We got two other candidates coming on next weekend, don't we? Or is that later this month?
No, that's the week after.
Oh, well, maybe he'll come on next week and we can give him a double dose interview. Because I had a few more questions I want to ask him too, but I don't like changing subjects too drastically. You know, like kind of like I like it to flow from one to another. It seems better for the interview. But
yeah, what's going on? Oh, he's gonna be. I don't know everything that he's got going on, but he's gonna be at the parade in Mitchell next Saturday, so you can check him out at that parade. That's Dusty's home territory. Challenging him.
Yeah. Is that next Saturday? Oh yeah, so he probably won't be able to come on. Maybe I can ask him some questions while I'm there, and we'll air it or something. One of these weeks.
Yeah, there you go. If you do a little 5-10 minute interview.
Yeah, I can do that.
So a couple other things Libertarian related we could plug. Tracy Quint has a debate next Friday in Rapid City. against Jamie Smith and Christy Nome. That'll be kind of fun. We're going to live stream the debate right here on Hedgehog Watchdog. So if you want to watch the debates with us and listen to us with our witty comments, and we'll make fun of Noam a little bit, or see if Tracy tells us that the Earth is 6,000 years old. See what happens. You never know what's going to happen when it's live like that.
Right.
And then they are trying to get confirmation from the venue, so we'll know tomorrow. But they're talking about doing a meet and greet with Tracy and Ashley, the governor and lieutenant governor candidate, at the Wobbly Bobby in Rapid City. The debates at 6:30 Mountain Time. They set that event, meet and greet event, to start at 8:30. So they should have plenty of time to get over there after the debate. So if you want to meet Tracy Quint or Ashley Strand, or you got questions for them, or you want to give them a bunch of money, probably go to the Wobbly Bobby next Friday. Other than that, not a whole lot going on. There's a new chapter of Young Americans for Liberty that's been forming down at USD, and they have said that they would be interested in hosting our candidates, coming down there and giving a speech. I haven't been given a date yet for that, but that would be cool if that ends up panning out. Get to go down and speak at USD. I know Tracy's going to do the parade for D-Days, Dakota Days. That's the homecoming for USD.
Oh, nice.
Tamara Lesnar on the 6th of October, she was invited to a forum up in Aberdeen called Pints and Politics and Pints at the One-Legged Pheasant Brewery up there. Every candidate, I was going to ask Collin, because I can't remember when it is, but I think it's like the 24th of October. He has a debate on SDPB against Dusty Johnson,
Nice.
the one and only debate. I know Tamara has a debate. Tamara Lesnar, who's the U.S. Senate candidate, she has a debate that next month as well on STPB, but I can't remember the date on that.
Nice. So it looked like we got a lot of stuff coming up here. Should be a fun, eventful election season.
Yep, last month. Got to get out there.
Yep.
Do your last minute campaigning. Tell your friends. Register Libertarian. Early voting has actually started. It started the other day. So if you're in South Dakota, you can go down to your county auditor's office and vote early. The last day to register to vote is October 24th. So everyone out there that isn't registered, as long as you support IM27, your ass needs to register. And you need to go vote. We need to get this done.
Again.
Yeah, again. Yeah, I didn't have nothing else. Upcoming podcasts. Like I said, this Friday we're going to stream the debate live. We're going to watch that. That should be a good time.
Yeah.
October. Jeez. I can't remember. Jeez, I'm blanking on the date. Let me look at our Facebook page. It'll tell me our next interview in our candidate series, and probably the last interview we do for the candidate series is, when is that? Come on. Waiting on Facebook to load. Anyway, here it is. Jeez.
Next weekend, right? So that'd be the
October 5th. No, it's My bad. It's Wednesday, October 5th. It's actually a special night and time.
All right.
So Wednesday, October 5th, special night and time. We got Darren Friedel for State Senate District 33 and Sean Natchke for State House District 29. We're going to do an interview with both of them just because we did interview Darren last October, almost a year ago, or well, pretty much will be a year ago. And then we also interviewed Sean Natchke in April when he was running for city council out in Sturgis. He's running for state house now. So yeah, we'll have both of them on the show October 5th. Tune in, ask questions, learn all about them.
Damn, how long have we been on the air so far? Has it been 2 years yet?
I think it almost has been 2 years because we started right after.
I can't believe his interview was a year ago already.
And for some reason, that thing's been getting a lot of downloads off of our website. So that's kind of interesting. Apparently, he's got a lot of fans or something, or it's a glitch. But it's like every day I log into that website, it's like 3 downloads for episode 41. It's like, huh, interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2 years. 2 years we've been doing this crap.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do upgrade our podcast studio pretty soon here.
Yep. You're gonna have to. Well, once the checks start rolling in, I've been waiting.
We'll do it in our bathrooms like Adam Jewell does.
In our bathroom. Oh, that's funny. All right, well, shit, I didn't have nothing else. Thanks to Collin Duprel. Here, I'll write this in the comments. If you want to learn more about Collin, you can check him out on Facebook, or you can go to his website, collinforcongress.com. That's the easiest way. Hit him up. He's a good candidate. Like I said, 2-way race. So he's got a really good shot this year. We got high hopes for him.
Mm-hmm. Hell yeah, dude. It's going to be breaking records.
Breaking hearts and breaking records.
Right. All right. We'll see you all for the live debate with Christy Nome and Tracy Quint and Jamie Smith. Have a good one.
Sounds good.